Hello there. He said Britain wasn't brave enough to admit it was wrong. He said the British Prime Minister had acted badly. And then he did something nobody saw coming. The Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad brought the standoff over the 15 captured British soldiers to an abrupt end just a few hours ago, when he pardoned and released them, all on live television. Our correspondent Ali Reza Ranagi was there at the presidential compound as the sailors first appeared. He described the scene for us live on Al-Jazeera.
The president coming downstairs, he's declining from the stairs, and I see Faye Turney coming. I see Faye Turney coming from the other side, and the other sailors are coming from the other side. The president is going to meet them halfway, and yes, they're standing there. I can see the sailors. I can 100% sure I can see Faye Turney. Her back is towards me. There are cameramen who are trying to take the picture. I hope you can receive these pictures live. A crowd of about 50, 60 people there. Many of them are cameramen. President Ahmadinejad seems to be shaking hands with them. He's talking now to Faye Turney. President Ahmadinejad is now talking to Faye Turney. I have no chance of knowing what they're talking about. It seems to be a friendly manner from both sides. And the cameramen are trying to take pictures.
So in the end, 13 tense days between Iran and Britain came down to a few, at times frenetic hours. Tim Friend looks back now at how the day unfolded.
Extraordinary scenes at the presidential palace. The president was seen shaking hands with the sailors and smiling and chatting. The sailors and marines who were wearing suits spoke to the president through a translator.
I'd like to thank yourself and the Iranian people.
In a carefully rehearsed propaganda coup, one of the sailors was heard saying in English, "We're grateful for your forgiveness." The president replied, "You're welcome." A few minutes earlier, it was the moment that everyone had waited for. No one had quite expected this, a long political speech followed by a surprise. At first, it seemed there would be further deadlock. The Iranian president announced that the Coast Guard, who had arrested the 15 British sailors and Marines, would be awarded medals. But then came the pardon. He said the British personnel would be released as a gift to the British people.
Hereby I announce that the great Iranian nation and the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran, reserving itself the sovereignty and legal rights to these British military forces on trial, will release these 15 captives and grant their release to the British people as a gift. And this comes from the Islamic teachings of Prophet Muhammad.
The initial reaction in London was guarded as they sought to get more details of the method and timing of the sailors' release. But very quickly the reaction turned to jubilation as families celebrated. This was an international crisis in its second week. And up to now, many issues had appeared unresolved. But suddenly last night, the Iranians started speaking directly to the British government. From now on, events will move swiftly. Tim Friend, Al Jazeera, London.
Well, a short time ago, the British Prime Minister Tony Blair made this statement, reacting to the news of the release.
I'm glad that our 15 service personnel have been released. I know their release will come as a profound relief, not just to them, but to their families that have endured such distress and anxiety over these past 12 days. Throughout, we have taken a measured approach, firm but calm, not negotiating, but not confronting either. I would like to thank our allies in Europe, our allies in the United Nations Security Council for their support, and also our friends and allies in the region who played their part. We're grateful to all of them, as we are to the officials in the Foreign Office and the Ministry of Defence and here in Downing Street for the work that they have done. And to the Iranian people, I would simply say this: we bear you no ill will. On the contrary, we respect Iran as an ancient civilization, as a nation with a proud and dignified history. And the disagreements that we have with your government, we wish to resolve peacefully through dialogue. I hope, as I've always hoped, that in the future we are able to do so. That's all I've got to say for this evening. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Let's go now to Nazanin Moshiri, who is in London outside the Foreign Office there. Nazanin, what would you call that? A fairly measured response from Tony Blair?
Well, two interesting points there. Tony Blair, in a way, defended the government's handling of this affair, and he also sent a message direct to the Iranian people, not to the Iranian government, but direct to the people of Iran, saying that we bear you no ill will. Now, he did not refer in any way to those scenes that Ali Reza witnessed there, Mohammed Ahmadinejad meeting the sailors, in a way greeting them and sending them off on their way, wishing them the best of luck. Extraordinary scenes that we saw there. He did not refer to them in any way. Relief all round, I'd imagine, at Downing Street and also here in the Foreign Office, that there's been a quick resolution to this. Now, what we know about the British sailors, we understand that they are believed to be in now at the British Embassy with British Embassy staff. We are expecting them to return on a flight from Tehran early Thursday morning and arrive back here in the UK at around 10 in the morning.
Nazanin, just quickly, what position does this leave Tony Blair in, given that he will now have sailors coming home who have, in their televised statements, contradicted what he said about their position, whether they were in Iraqi or Iranian waters?
Well, look, I'm sure officials here will be spinning it in their own way, saying that once again the Iranians have very cleverly used their live TV station as a propaganda device. And also, you know, these are young men, these are young sailors, possibly under pressure in some way. They'll be spinning it like that. But obviously, you know, there'll be a lot of pressure on Tony Blair. And it was very interesting that he did not refer to that meeting between the sailors and Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. And also, this is going to have a pretty dire effect on relations between Iran and Britain, which are pretty low anyway before this crisis started. If you remember, just a few weeks ago, British commanders in Basra were blaming Iranian intelligence officers for funding, arming the insurgency there. So not good news really for relations between Britain and Iran.
Good to talk to you, Nazanin. Nazanin Moshiri in London. Well, Al Jazeera's Ali Reza Ranagi is in Tehran. He says President Ahmadinejad's announcement came as quite a surprise there.
All we expected was the release of Faye Turney as a gesture of good faith by the Iranians. We never expected the release of all 15 sailors, because none of the two conditions that the Iranian government had put forward for the British government, to apologize officially and also to admit to the problem and give guarantees that there will never happen again such aggressions to Iranian waters, were not met by the British government as far as we knew. But at the same time, President Ahmadinejad led this, if you like, the propaganda campaign very well, and took advantage of a very, took everyone off guard. At the end of his opening statement, he just referred in a few sentences that those sailors are going to be released, although Iran has the power to keep them and has the power to put them to trial.
Right, let's get some other news of the day now. Nancy Pelosi says Syria is prepared to begin peace negotiations with Israel. The Speaker of the US House of Representatives met President Bashar al-Assad and other top Syrian officials in Damascus. She told them Israel is willing to open talks with Syria, provided certain conditions are met. Rula Amin reports.
Nancy Pelosi had several messages for the Syrian president. One from Israel. Israeli Prime Minister is ready for peace talks. And she says President Assad told her he's ready as well to resume peace talks with Israel.
We were very pleased with the reassurances we received from the president that he was ready to resume the peace process. He was ready to engage in negotiations with peace with Israel.
A large part of her discussions focused on Iraq. demanding that Syria plays a constructive role to stop the bloodshed there and to control its border.